Hello and welcome to another edition of Atlas Information Live. We are your host, Attlas Alex, and we would like to welcome you today. If this is your first time joining us, then a very special welcome. We are glad to have you here. And today, we are going to indulge the fact that this is the 33rd episode of Season 3 of Atlas Information Live. And that's going to be the primary topic of today. But before we get into it, we wanted just to take a moment to ask all of you how you have been making out this this present Mercury in retrograde. Perhaps you didn't even know, but surely you noticed. You must have noticed something was off. Something has been a little, again, off, as it were, these past few days since Wednesday of this past week. And we just wanted to take this opportunity to give you an opportunity to share any experiences related to this retrograde. This retrograde will last until the 15th of September. And we don't know about you, but in our case, it hit us pretty hard. And it's particularly inconvenient considering we're trying to finish a book. And as you know, Mercury, being the messenger of the gods, Mercury rules over communication. And suffice it to say, the progress on the book, which we had hoped to complete by the end of August, has now hit a bit of a speed bump, and that's putting it mildly. In fact, we were even tempted to cancel today's live stream because of the effect that we have been feeling this time around. It seems to be particularly acute. Now, we often feel the effects of Mercury in retrograde like everyone does. But again, because of the particular circumstances we find ourselves in, it was an unfortunate coincidence, if there is such a thing. So we're really fighting our way through it, and hopefully we will not make a complete mess of today's live stream as a result. But if you have been feeling anything and you wanted an opportunity to share or ask, or perhaps you were wondering why you were feeling off, that could very well be the reason. You maybe weren't aware that Mercury was in retrograde. And we don't portend to be experts in astrology. That's not our area of expertise by any stretch of the imagination. But we do experience what we experience. And for us, at least, this retrograde has been marked by, among other things, an insane appetite for cravings, for junk food and whatnot. And perhaps somebody at the grocery store or someone at Frito-Lay uh, decided that they would put Doritos and their Lay's potato chips on promotion, on sale, to correspond directly with the beginning of this Mercury in retrograde. We're not making this up. And we don't think we can make it up. And we frankly don't think it's a coincidence, honestly. Surely there are people at these companies, especially when they're talking about, manufacturers of junk food and so on and so forth. There must be individuals who are at least aware of these things and knowledgeable as to the effects that they have on people. And so it's not surprising to us at all that the Doritos go on sale when Mercury in retrograde begins, and it's likely they're going to be on sale. But it's what kind of special it is, though, right? It's not like the bag of chips go on sale. No, 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 no. It's it's two for $7. You have to buy two bags in order to get the discount. And well, that's basically speaks for itself, doesn't it? So we've been suffering through these sorts of things since Wednesday, and we've been trying to continue working on the book, and things have just been piling up. So that's been our experience so far. So if you do find yourself uh, sort of, battling your egos to a greater degree over the next few weeks, or you find yourself feeling anxious or depression, or you have difficulty communicating, you end up in arguments or misunderstandings, uh, it may be possible, or it is very likely, that this Mercury retrograde is having an impact on you. Some of the astrology related advice is to try to avoid signing any major contracts during this period. Or at the very least, if you are going to enter into some sort of contractual obligation, be sure that you triple and quadruple read the fine print, and that you absolutely understand and comprehend what you are getting yourself into. Because, as we said, Mercury is responsible for communication. And when Mercury is in retrograde, our capacity for understanding and comprehension is greatly diminished. It's greatly reduced. We have a higher tendency to misinterpret, or to hear what we want to hear, or see what we want to see, or the reverse, see precisely what we don't want to hear, and hear precisely what we don't want to see. So, we have a guest joining us.
Good evening.
How are you today?
Very well, very well. Good to see you.
And have you been experiencing any weird things during the beginning of this retrograde?
Life's life's always weird, never just this retrograde. Um, yeah, not weird, but repetitions of old situations, almost like a retest. Almost like a retest. And when this situation happened a couple of years ago, I blew up like a volcano. But this time I was level-headed, calm, saw it for what it was, moved smoothly through it.
Well, that's definitely something else that happens. Like, we during retrograde, we tend to revisit old habits and old patterns and old, as you said, tests, and they
Mm.
tend to represent themselves in sometimes new and novel ways, sometimes in the same old way, sometimes in the exact same old way. And as you said, we're faced with similar temptations, and hopefully we don't give in this time like we did, the last time. So We have been able to marginally, certainly on the cravings front, we have
Well,
been able to marginally control ourselves in light of what's been going on.
I just
But
completed a 3-day fast. I didn't realize there was Mercury retrograde going on,
oh,
but
really? Oh, well, there you go. Okay.
instinctively I fasted for the last 3 days, and I've just finished and had a feast before I came online tonight.
Oh, okay. Well, that was a good intuition of yours to do, because this retrograde is a perfect time to fast,
Mm,
because you have that. It's well, it's just very conducive to strengthening willpower, and
mm,
also putting yourself into more contemplative, meditative states, and more making you more resilient. When the body is in that mode, then believe it or not, cravings and whatnot have less of an impact, less of
mm,
an ability to um, to get their claws into us, if that's the right expression.
mm.
So we're not sure if it's the right expression, because we're uh, we're just not ourselves. Okay, so with that out of the way, I don't know if anybody else wanted to make any comments about that, but 333. That's the name of the game today, and we're going to start. Behind us, if you can, this supposedly is a visualization of the frequency 369, which of course we're going to be getting into, because this 369, of course, derives from the number 3. And the obvious implication here is 3 threes are 9, and 9 minus 3 is 6. So it's in this context that we we deal with the configuration which many have openly stated, including Nikolai Tesla, that if you want to know the secrets of the universe, you have to understand the mysteries of the 3, the 6, and the 9. And there are an endless number of ways and places that these 3 numbers can take us. Just for the sake of interest, for instance, we downloaded um, the following visualization. Now, we don't know who made this, um, but this is just a small sampling of where looking at the 3, the 6, and the 9 can take us. And by no means are we going to go through this in any particular detail. It was just something that we came across. Somebody went through the trouble of making this, and clearly, these 3 numbers contain a mathematical, logical, uh, and magical quality at their very heart, and the relationship between the 3. So we can begin by just scratching the surface by looking at visualization like this one, for example. This is a version of the Enneagram. This is the Enneagram that we're more familiar with, but this is another one. And in both cases, we have a circle, we have the digits, right? 1 to 9 around the circle. And then we have, of course, highlighted here, right? We have the 3, the 6, and the 9. And then the other numbers orienting in one way or another. These have various different significances depending on where you're coming from and what point of view you're taking. And there are others who go to great lengths. So again, here just to highlight, there's 3, there's 6, and there's 9. And obviously that forms a triangle. The 3, so we shouldn't overlook the fact that on this numerical relationship around a circle, the coordinate points of the 3, 6, and 9 create the triangle or the trinity. There's 3 numbers, and there's 3 numbers, their base is 3. So there's 3 points and 3 sides. This is significant, and we'll get to that as to why that is in just a moment. The other significance of these are not particularly interesting at the moment, but there is a third configuration that we can look at. Now, this one is interesting because once again, we have this phenomenon of 3 showing up within the 6 and the 9. And that is, of course, we can try to highlight this if we can, right? We have these 3 triangles. And each triangle puts at its point, right? Either, so in the 3, 6, and the 9, we have that triangle. But at each point, we have the apex of another triangle. So again, it's this repetition of 3 and 3 by 3 and so on and so forth. So this intricate relationship between the 3, the 6, and the 9. Now, again, if we wanted to, we could keep extrapolating and pulling on these threads, and it can take us in an infinite number of places, and people have done so, like that visualization we showed you just a few moments earlier. But there's one, where is it? There it is. There's one that we find particularly interesting. Now here you may see inside this circle, and maybe I'll make it as big as possible. This is known as the flower of life, and it's not the complete flower of life. It's just a component or the center of the flower of life. And if you extrapolate this out, you get, you can get Metatron's cube and the tree of life and so on and so forth. But what's interesting about this configuration is that each one of the circles represents a digit here. So there's 1, 2, right? 3, 4, 5, 6 circles. And those 6 circles produce, and then the 7th circle in the middle that connects them all these interlocking circles. We've arrived at this in our own way, if you recall, months ago when we did the creation from nothing, the alm of life and the expansion of the universe out of nothing, using a different modality to arrive at someplace similar. But what's interesting here is that these 6 points are 6 points of a hexagon. And here we see that, the 3 and the 6 and the 9 are missing. So, and we might ask ourselves, why they're missing. And that's because, like in these other 2 examples, the 3 and 6 and 9 are connected by a triangle, and the other digits have this other orientation, these other connections between them. But the 3 and 6 and 9 are separate. In this configuration, which again is the origin or the basis for the flower of life, we have an interesting phenomenon. At the intersection of 1 and 2, the intersection of 1 and 2, we have to decide where we're going to intersect them. We're going to intersect them like, oh, well, okay, this has to be here. Because 1 plus 2 equals 3. And the intersection between 2 and 4 is 6, because 2 plus 4 equals 6. And the intersection of the 4th and 5th circle is 9, because 4 plus 5 equals 9. And the intersection between 5 and 7, what do you suppose that is? Any guesses?
3.
How did you arrive at that?
5 plus 7 is 12, making a root of 3. 1 plus 2.
5 plus 7 equals 12. 1 plus 2 equals 3. Correct. And how about 7 and 8?
6.
Because
8 and 7 is 15, making 6 as a root number.
And finally, 1 plus 8, well, that's pretty easy. And 2 plus 7 is 9. Now we have this interesting phenomenon where, if you recall, just a moment ago, we showed something with 3 triangles. Here we have 3 triangles. It's actually, we have 3 triangles. If we can get our pen, we're going to try to draw in blue here, right? And 3, 6, 9. And right, 3, 6, 9, and 3, 6, 9. Well, I have more than that, actually. And then we have this triangle, right? And this triangle, but these are all 3s and 6s and 9s. It means that in this configuration, in the tree of life and the flower of life, right, it's all 3s and 6s and 9s. And in fact, if you were to connect these points like so, you know what we call that in the middle there? That's the core of Metatron's cube. In the core of Metatron's cube, the actual Metatron's cube and the flower of life contains all of sacred geometry and all geometric forms as we know them. So this is a condensed, abbreviated version of that because it's just we're looking at the very heart of the tree of the flower of life. But regardless, we're looking at the foundational, mathematical, logical, magical nature of the 3 and the 6 and the 9. And again, we are only, with these few scribblings, we are only barely scratching the surface. We are literally just looking at the foundation, the nucleus of what unfolds, especially on the spiral uh, path, the spiral numerical advance of number theory. Then you get these advanced enneagrams, and you get all of the octaves and everything else like flowing out of this. And if we had a lifetime to study all of this intellectually and try to draw this all out and map this all out, perhaps we might arrive at a place like Nikola Tesla and being able to apply this uh, to his knowledge. His knowledge is practical working knowledge of electricity, for example. But we are just looking at the very simple foundations, and you can spend hours and hours and hours just doing a Google search, an image search on Google for 369, and what you will find is just endless diagrams showing the peculiar relationship between these three numbers. And that's all very interesting. That's all very interesting. But we have to ask ourselves, is it practical? Is it meaningful? How do we benefit from the relationship between 369? How do we make use of that relationship on the path? Because many times in our experience, we have found individuals who have dedicated their life to the study of esotericism and gematria and sacred geometry and magical numbers and numerology, and on and on and on it goes. And yet those individuals are no closer to awakening. Zero. They have filled their head and they have covered their walls, and they might have, endless notebooks filled with scribblings, looking like this, and the countless iterations and permutations of all of this. But well, that's useless. Okay. But we have to ask ourselves the question, right? Like, and we took a business course. We have a master's in business administration, an MBA, many moons ago, over 20 years ago now. But they loved asking this question. Right? So what? So that's very interesting. But we are on a path of awakening and self-realization, or at least we like to think that we are. We hope that we are. What good does any of this do for us? I mean, honestly, can you look at this and say, oh, now I know how to change my life? No, you don't. You can't. It's like the difference between the way a computer programmer looks at a video game or a website. They might look at the underlying code and they might be fascinated by how it was built. They're fascinated. And they tear it all down like an engineer tearing down an engine to figure out how it works. And they're fascinated by all the inner workings of it. But that's not going to make them a better person. And in the case of the computer programmer, it's not going to help them play the game or master the game. It's not even necessarily going to make someone a better engineer or a better computer programmer. It really isn't. So why would we even bother making this the topic of today? What's the point? Well, serendipity is a beautiful thing. It just so happens that Glorianne released episode 2 of their sacred sexuality series that they're doing, and it premiered at noon today. And we highly recommend you watching this when you get a chance. Obviously, here it's you can see the title. It's episode 2, The Secret History of Humanity, and in it they go through the secret history of humanity. Right? It's pretty straightforward. But it's part of the sacred sexuality series that they are slowly releasing. And it was just serendipitous that it appeared today at noon, 2 hours before our live stream. We actually watched it prior to, and we recommend that after this live stream or when you get a chance for you to watch it as well. And just to that effect, we are going to share with you the link, the YouTube link, and there it is on screen as well. But you can find it easily enough. Glorian's, if you just go to Glorian, and it's going to be one of their featured videos, if not the featured video. But the link is in the chat, and we highly recommend watching it because it's very informative. But it also relates directly to today's topic, which is the 3, the 6, and the 9. And what it really means for us, for everyone. Here we have 2 triangles overlaid atop of each other. Now, we're sure you've seen this before. And this is obviously known as the Star of David, or, it's understood in many ways. But here we have 3 points and then another 3 points. So we have 6 points in total, right? The interesting aspect of this configuration, it relates twofold. One, you've heard as above, so below. And it is also the union of masculine and feminine. The masculine, the phallus or the blade, right? And the feminine, the uterus. The masculine positive and the feminine negative or receptive. And when these two unite, make that bigger. uh, we achieve the union of masculine and feminine. And this is the six-pointed star. It's also the hexagon, which is the geometric shape which is the most efficient geometric shape in all of nature. That's why honeybees use it. The honeycomb. A perfect hexagon placed next to each other. Well, there's no extra space lost. The hexagon is the perfect repeating shape to maximally utilize space. In that sense, it is the maximal way to achieve division of space. And is the most efficient. So now, if we meditate on that just for a moment, we arrive at something akin to the conservation of energy. And we arrive at a mechanical law of nature. The maximal utilization of space. This is an axiom of mechanical nature. Nothing going to waste. The conservation of energy. These are axioms of mechanical nature. And again, we see that, we witness that in the beehives of honeybees and wasps and all sorts of things that create honeycomb. It is the most efficient structure, in other words, in terms of utilization of space. Now, esoterically, we know that space is the Akash, or the body of the Divine Mother. This means that whereas 6 represents mechanical nature, to draw it on the Alm of Life, we draw a 6 with a downward, inward spiral. This is a devolutionary spiral, or a crystallizing spiral, going from the subtle to the more dense. The inverse of that is just to draw a 9. We are now on an ascending spiral. Even though it looks like it's going down, we know from the Alm of Life that on a spiral, you got to go down before you can go up. And either way, because of the relationship of this is an expansion and this is a contraction. This is an evolution and this is a devolution. We have 9 and we have 6. And if that looks familiar, it should. And hopefully we don't have to dig up an image of the Tao, the yin and yang. At any given point in time, as we discussed last week, when we were discussing, well, shielding and shields and everything that we were discussing last week, when you encounter a baffle, when you encounter an obstacle, you have the option of being a 6 or being a 9. And very often you need both. You need to experience one, or at least the temptation of one, before you can know the other. This is the great teaching of the Tao, because within each is the other, and the 6 and the 9 embody that simply by virtue of the fact that a 6 is an inverted 9. And if you take this 6, and hopefully it'll let us do this, if we take this 6, we just literally turn it around, it becomes a 9. So a 6 is an inverted 9 is another way to say that. And well, we should probably grab this. I don't know if it'll let us do this. Yeah, okay. Let's see if we can. It's not going to let us do it. Well, anyway. So what happened to the 3 in all of this? Well, the 3's been here the whole time, of course, because it's been right here. Because this is one triangle, and this is a second triangle, and the union of these triangles creates the Star of David. Yes, the 6-pointed star, but it also creates the hexagon in the middle, which is the third state, right? The union state. So you have 1 plus 2 equals 3. This, as you may know or should know, and why it was serendipitous that the Sacred Sexuality video appeared serendipitously today, is that the law of 3 is the creative law of the universe. Masculine, feminine, and union of masculine and feminine, right? The phallus, the uterus, and sex. That's why the cross, the X, is related to sex. But there's another relation to 3. There's another way in which 3 relates. So sex is the creative law of the universe. So positive, negative, and neutral forces. Masculine, feminine, and union of masculine and feminine. But in the Alm of life, we experience the spirals of evolution and devolution, which means there has to be motion, there has to be movement taking place. So with the 3 factors, with the law of 3, we also have to put the law of 3 into motion. And we do that by showing this in a spinning. You have to imagine that the tips are spinning along with everything else. So you put this in motion, and you have the three factors. And those three factors we've discussed before. They are sacrifice, death, and birth. Clearly, death and birth are related to sex, and death, birth, and sacrifice puts the law of three, the creative law of the universe, into motion and enables the spirals of the Aum of life to become possible. As we execute or experience the law of three, the union. Well, actually, let's back up. There's one more thing we need to, and we've described this before. There is a symbol for man and woman that relates to the nature of the masculine and feminine forces. The masculine being expressive, or the wholly affirming, and the feminine being receptive, or the wholly negating. People always confuse the co-creation of reality with the manifesting of desires, and we'll get to that in more detail in a moment. They say, oh, well, you co-create your reality. And they don't understand that in the field of consciousness, consciousness has and must have a receptive aspect. And in order for a moment to be created, in order for an experience to be had, it needs to receive an expression. And in the moment that the receptive, in the field of consciousness, the moment that we receive an expression through consciousness, we experience. The key here is this X. The cross. The union of masculine expression and feminine reception. This is the entire basis of Tantra. This is the true meaning of Tantra. Tantra as the creative act, moment by moment, the actual creation of experience. Experience doesn't exist if it is not created. There is no, so this has been demonstrated in the so-called double slit experiment of quantum mechanics, where if you look at light, if you don't look at light, it behaves as, oh, I can't remember if it behaves as a particle or wave. Then you look at it and it behaves as a particle, or you don't look at it, it behaves as a wave. It behaves differently depending on whether you're looking at it or not. We experience light a certain way, but light doesn't exist in that form until we experience it. So we literally co-create the reality of light as we know it by shining our consciousness on it. By receiving its expression, it becomes something different. It becomes something new. It becomes real in the sense of it can be experienced. And in that sense, it also becomes conditioned. It becomes physical light because we experience it in that way at this present level of reality. But no matter how you slice it, what we're talking about here is the law of three, the creative law of the universe. Three forces: masculine, feminine, and union. Expression, reception, experience. These truths are the type of truths which one cannot arrive at, simply by studying these, the mathematical phenomena of, and all the different ways that three, the six, and the three, the six, and the nine interact with each other in geometry and in all these myriad ways. This is a far more fundamental and far more useful application of the understanding of the three, the six, and the nine. Now, why is that so? How is that so? We said that we would get to it. And the reason it is so is that with every experience, this creative experience is multiplicative. It leads to something else. The law of cause and effect, the three factors, the motion and the spiral nature of that motion in the Alm of Life is every revolution of the Alm of Life either is evolutionary or it's devolutionary. That means it's either a 9 or a 6. So every experience, every manifestation of Tantra, which is just expression and reception in its truest fundamental nature, every experience creates. But how does it create? In which way does it create? Does it create as a 6 or as a 9? Does it create in an upright way or an inverted way? And if we look at going through life as a series of baffles, and we can look at a baffle as a terrible baffle, we come up against some obstacle and we look at the flow of our life and we run into that. That obstacle, that test, that trial, that ordeal may want to make us swirl this way, or may make us swirl this way. Obviously, one is making us go down, and one is making us go up and allowing us to overcome that obstacle. And at any given point in time, any act of creation, any moment of Tantra, where an expression and a reception meet, there is a choice of how that expression, that baffle, if you want to treat it as such, is going to be, how it's going to be met, and what are we going to do with it. Are we going to meet that challenge as an upright 9 or as an inverted 6? Oh, we should probably it should be noted here that what makes a 9 into a 6, well, we can say, well, it's inverted. Mathematically, what turns a 9 into a 6? You subtract 3. The creative force. And if you want to take it one step further, the experience, if you subtract the experience or the experiential knowledge, a 9 falls and becomes a 3. Something is lost. This is what makes the upright spiral of evolution become the downward spiral of devolution. An upright 9 becomes a 6. And something is lost in the process. The creative power and the experience. The capacity to create knowledge from experience is lost. In the human machine, well, where are we at? Okay. In the human machine, we have 3 brains. We have our mind, and we have our heart, and we have our body, but specifically, we have our spinal column, and we have our 5 centers, our motor, instinctive. I'm just going to write instinct terribly there. And motor, instinctive, and sexual centers. So we have our motor, we have our instinctive, and we have our sexual centers. And then we have our mind, and we have our heart. These are the 3 brains and 5 centers. The motor, instinctive, sexual center is, of course, along the spinal column, down to the coccyx and up to the base of the skull, which is which people understand as our reptilian brain. but that's why, for example, we put harnesses on animals and leashes on dogs, because that's just happens to be where, if you want to lead an animal around, you put a rope around that center. That's the motor center. You can gain control, or more control, over an animal by controlling the motor center. And that's why animals, and even mothers in the wild, uh, all sorts of animals, but particularly mammals. Mammals will Mothers will pick up their young by the scruff of the neck. They'll delicately pick up their babies by the scruff of the neck and carry them around, because they know that by doing that, number one, they're not going to hurt their their baby, but also the baby's not going to squirm and try to get away, because once you grab the back of the neck here, the scruff of the neck, it's you practically immobilize the animal. The animal knows that you're in control and it doesn't fight, right? Um, Dogs play this way, and it's a dominance behavior for who wins the fight. And many different animals use that, but it's also a way predators will use it when they're hunting, to essentially paralyze their prey. They will go for that part and bite very hard there at the base of the neck and the spine. And we all know, tragically, we all know that if you break your neck, you become paralyzed. It's very likely that you will become paralyzed if you have a break somewhere in the vertebrae of the neck. Again, because we're dealing with the motor center, and that is the center that's responsible for all our our ability to move. And then, of course, we have the instinctual center, the instinctive center. That's why gut feeling, it can't always be chalked up as intuition, right? Instinct is a very real phenomenon, and that's one of our brains. We can feel punched in the gut, and it's not necessarily because we're heartbroken or because we're having intuition. It's we can be just having an instinctual response to some threat. And then, of course, the sexual center doesn't need any explanation. The heart and the mind, hopefully, doesn't need any explanation. The mind, of course, is the intellectual center, and the heart is the emotional center. Three brains. Three brains. As we are going through life and experiencing in life, on the tree of life, the sexual force is in Yesod. So if we draw very quickly a tree of life, if we're doing this right, this should be, yeah, okay. The ninth sphere is Yesod. This is the third dimension down here. This is the sexual force. Our sexual energy, the ninth sphere. It's the fourth dimension, vital body. 9, we said, is evolutionary. It's an upright 9. So as we go through life, we have energy. We have that creative energy. That creative energy is there to enable us to have tantra, to create experience. That experience is created using the vital energy, the energy of the fourth dimension, which is called the foundation of the third dimension. So we have that energy available to us. And it is the foundation of reality. It is the foundation of our physical bodies. But as we go through life and we face our tests, trials, and ordeals, moment to moment, how are we creating those moments? What type of tantra do we live? Do we experience? Are we an upright 9 in our mind and our heart and in our body? Or do we succumb to the forces that are trying to steal our sexual energy? They're going to siphon off our sexual energy. And do we fall and become 6s, inverted 9s in each of our 3 brains? So instead of being a 999, we become a 666, which hopefully we shouldn't have to explain to anybody is the mark of the beast. This is the true meaning that's in the book of Revelations. And the true importance for anyone on the path to know the meaning of 3, the 6, and the 9. And notice, we've been talking about sexual energy, we've been talking about Tantra, but we haven't actually talked about sex in any of this. Why sacred sexuality is important? Well, that's a whole different level of teaching about the 3, the 6, and the 9. It's related to what we just shared. It is the ultimate expression of the application of the sexual force, of the creative force. And to appreciate and understand this relationship between the 9, the 6, and the 3, fully, we have in what's esoterically known as the Kunda buffer organ. We have 3s being subtracted from the mind, from the heart, and from the body. And these 3s, of course, are 9, which is Yesod, on the foundation, flowing down and out. The creative force, the vital force, the energy with which we so-called co-create our reality, but we actually create our reality through Tantra, through the reception of expressions of consciousness in the field of consciousness. You know that expression down and out, to be down and out. If we can, this is the tale of Satan, the symbolic tale of Satan. It was one the Lemurians had a tale, a physical tale. It wasn't a physical tale, it was a metaphysical tale. And you can still feel your metaphysical tale in the vital body if you meditate on it. And it was designed to Well, we'll let you watch the video that Glorianne released today that we shared with you earlier. The point of understanding this relationship is that in each and every moment, the 3 and the 6 and the 9 are playing themselves out in us. And are we using our creative energy in our mind, in our heart, and in our body to become upright 9s and have the sexual force flowing up, up the tree of life, up the spinal column, up and Adam, up and Adam, up and Adam. To be an upright 9. Adam meaning Adam Nous. Adam meaning the primordial Adam, a true human being, a Buddha, and up an Adam. This relates to what Shakespeare called the name of action. The name of action meaning our innermost. Today is the 33rd episode of the 3rd season, so 333. All of this is encoded in that. We just wanted to have an opportunity to review this, because I know we've covered this before, but it seemed like the time to do it. And again, serendipitously, Glorianne released the episode 2 of its Sacred Sexuality series, which looks like it's going to be an excellent series. And naturally, because we're talking about Tantra here, this relates to every aspect of our life, but particularly and especially when it comes to sacred sexuality, how we utilize the sexual force. Because to be an upright 9 is one away from a perfect 10. And the perfect 10 is, as we've drawn before, right? The origin and everything, but the separation between the two means we do this. It's the infinite, the infinity, infinite, or the holy 8. Two upright 9s who come together are one holy 8. Of course, any multiple of 9 reduces to 9, so you could say 1 plus 9 equals 9, sure. But we cannot ignore that relationship. Incidentally, 3 6s are also 18. So you can say, well, by this definition, someone who's a 666, someone who's a demon, But they're also a one infinity. They're also related to the Holy Eight. Well, there is something called the wheel of samsara, the wheel of suffering, which is an infinite loop, which means you can be stuck on the wheel of suffering. You can be stuck as a demon for infinity. The 6 and the 9 are the Tao. And because the 6 and the 9 are the Tao, they represent the two aspects of the Absolute. And the Absolute is infinite. The universe is infinite. God is infinite. And so it's only logical, or it only makes sense. And ironically, 3 9s are 21. The 3 9s are 27, which reduces to 9, of course. That doesn't really tell us much. So another way to look at this is that the goal of the Tao is to use the inverted 6 and transmute it, transform it, make it into an upright 9. Because when we do that, we are standing in front of the door of infinity, the Holy Eight. But we cannot accomplish this, we cannot achieve this unless we confront those aspects of us which constitute that inverted 6, those aspects of us which are fallen. Yet another way, because to say, okay, invert, transform, okay, how do you transform a 6 into a 9? You add 3. You add 3 to 6. And you add the 3. Masculine, feminine, and union of masculine and feminine. The 3 forces, sex. But you add it, you don't subtract it, you don't take it away. You don't lose it. You don't let the 3 flow down and out. You have the 3 flow, the 3 flows up an atom, not creating the tail of Satan, but the risen Kundalini. The 3 going up the spinal column and up the spinal column of our physical vehicle, our human machine. But each time we're adding 3 to one of these 6s and turning it into an upright 9. Okay, let's take a moment, take a pause. Let's we had a couple little comments. Hermes Tree said, I've gotten a sore throat and a slight cold. Sorry to hear that, but that's maybe Mercury in retrograde is getting at you. And Jennifer mentioned and gave us the answer 3 when we asked it, and she mentioned numerology. And she said also, what is the mark on the forehead in Revelations 13, 16 to 18? The mark of the beast? That's 666. You wear 666 on your forehead because your psyche, your emotions, your mind, and your actions are all sixes. That's the mark of the beast. That's the mark of the beast. 666. That's precisely, and we were walking through this whole uh, spaghetti code here, this whole mess for the very to make that very point, right? The mark of the beast. And we have that expression to wear your heart on your sleeve. Well, St. John of Patmos, he says, no, they're going to wear the mark of the beast on their forehead because that's on your brow. You have that expressions like the sweat of your brow and so on. And you're if your brow is furrowed, you're angry, you're stressed, you're upset, right? You're wearing the mark of the beast because you're wasting your energy. Your energy is flowing out through your centers and it's turning you into a, you know, oh, excuse me. The significance of this relationship and how it relates to the Tao, because remember also the Tao is 3, right? It's positive, negative, and union. And there's always, as it's shown in the Tao, in the yin and yang, there's always a bit of one in the other. And what the Taoists refer to is this whole notion that, good and bad, good and evil don't really exist. They only are concepts and they're really subjective because something which appears bad in the moment might turn out to be something very good later on. And there are, different examples where uh, we can give. For example, you're trying to make it to work on time, and a train crosses the path in front of you, the railway crossing, and there's this 5 mile long train, and it takes half an hour to get across the railway crossing, and you end up half an hour late for work. Well, that's bad, right? Or it seems like it's bad. Meanwhile, on your way on the highway, you pass by this fatal car crash and this 18-car pileup, which you missed, you avoided because the train held you up. So what appeared in the moment was very bad, making you late for work. It was actually a blessing. It was a godsend. Saved you from getting caught in the 18-car pileup and not only being late for work, but possibly even being permanently or fatally injured. So the Tao is all about comprehending and understanding that this duality exists in everything. We'll expand on that a little bit more in a moment, because Jennifer follows up by asking, so the 144,000 are sealed on their foreheads is the inverse of the 6. It's the 9. 144,000 equals 9. That's correct. So coming back to our little visualization here, and maybe we'll, oh, what happened? Grabbed the 9 and it went. Oh, here it goes. Go over there. You know what? Let's just do one that's a little cleaned up. Okay. So we have an individual. Okay. Now, if they are a 9 in their mental, emotional, and motor instinctive sexual centers, they're using the energy, the sexual force, and they're directing it up and at them, up and in. And really, we're raising it up and illuminating all of our chakras. And, we can draw all of our spinning chakras are all being put into activity, but especially the crown chakra. These are the individuals who are part of this 144,000 who wear 9 on their forehead, sealed. Because what else is in the forehead? If not what we call, right, the third eye. Oh, look at that. Another 3. So the 9 is not just a 9. The 9 is an expanding upward evolutionary arc of the Aum of life, expanding consciousness, expanding awareness, the creation of a true human being who is awake, and is an upright 9 in each of their 3 brains. Their third eye is open because the sexual force, the creative force, is energizing and vitalizing all of their chakras and opening their third eye. And the divine feminine, who is the fire, right? The fire of divine feminine raised up to meet the fire of the divine masculine. Remember in the Pentecost, remember the disciples of Jesus have the tongues of fire atop their head? You know how every saint and every Buddha and every picture of Jesus, they're all shown with halos about their head. Those are all symbols of the arisen Kundalini. The damned, the ones who carry the mark on the beast, the mark of the beast, they are 666 in each of their 3 brains, and they wear it on their forehead because the 666 closes off the third eye. They're mechanical. Okay, let's make that a little smaller. Okay, Stuart Wilson says gratitude for all moment transcends the Tao of good and bad, isn't it? In truth, the goal is to transcend the Tao. And by transcending the Tao, what we realize is that there is no baffle. There is no baffle. There is no adversary outside of us. That our capacity to become this, right? Our capacity to become, where did it go? Our capacity to become a true human being exists, and it's trapped in our 666. It's trapped in our mechanicity. And the temptations that we experience to become a 6 or remain a 6, not become a 6, remain a 6. The temptations to keep spilling our 333, okay, which is 9, to keep spilling our sexual force and be a demon. That's the tail of Satan, right? All demons have these tails. They all have this little arrow on the end of those tails, and they're always pointing down. The temptation to do this is precisely showing us the way to invert the 6 and become a 9. And this is the comprehension of the Tao and what it means to be beyond the Tao, is that no one can master themselves without an adversary. But we're mastering ourselves, which means the adversary is ourself. The 3 and the 6 and the 9 they're intimately related in the same way that we are all a trinity or a triunity. We not only have, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, divine masculine, divine feminine, and union of divine masculine and feminine. That is a trinity, the highest trinity. But we ourselves are a mortal vessel who has an innermost being. And it is the union of those two which forms the lower trinity. We become a triune human being. And we have used the analogy in the past, hopefully to good effect, but we've used the analogy in the past of a bicycle. That's a terrible bicycle, but you get the idea. Because we have a mortal self where the rubber meets the road. This is in the world of action. But we have an innermost being, the self, with a big S, who is supposed to be steering the bike. In other words, direction. And our self is connected via a chain, which is connection. And the being pedals the bike, and that crank provides, right, the motivation. So here we have a trinity. Three in one. Innermost being, mortal vessel, and union of being and vessel. And you have every aspect of the human condition, of a true human being, of a triune human being contained in that allegory, in that metaphor of the bicycle. You have direction. Oh, and incidentally, you also have what they call alignment, because the rear wheel is not only connected to the bicycle by the links in the chain, the ties that bind, right? Like wedding bands, but the rear wheel follows the front wheel. The rear wheel is in alignment with the front wheel which provides direction. And the motivation comes from the pedals being pedaled. That's willpower. That's our inner strength, because it's through our connection to our higher self that we gain access to our true strength. It's through the chain, through the link that we have, the connection that we have. Let's go to Raphael says, many people associate the number 666 with the economic system of the beast due to the belief that those without the mark of the beast will be unable to engage in buying or selling. This number is often linked to a potential global currency system or world government. However, it can also be interpreted as being connected to human consciousness and sexual energy. Look at the economic system that we have today. Is it not based on consumption? What do you suppose is being consumed? Honestly, look at what's being consumed. All that time and effort and energy that is spent, that people spend on jobs they hate, to buy crap they don't need, or then to come home and waste an exorbitant more amount of time throwing good money after bad, good currency after bad, good energy after bad, doing what? Entertaining themselves or stuffing themselves with food and, garbage like junk food. And I'm guilty of that. But only now and then, when I really give into those cravings. Because that stuff is a drug. It's all a drug. What do you suppose every drug, everything that's hypnotic and addictive is out for? It's out for your attention. It's out for your energy. Money is just a physical expression, a physical symbol of energy, but everything's about the flow and the transfer of energy. So when you say that many people associate the number 666 with the economic system, they're right. And only the people with the mark of the beast can partake in the economic system. Because if you don't waste your energy, if you're not a consumer, you're a saver. You're a transmuter. You transmute energy. And you have no lack, you have no want, you have no need. You're not a very good consumer, are you? Just like the COVIDiacy was a referendum on fear. What is fear? Well, fear is definitely embodied in that 666. And look at all the people who were denied the ability to go on flights or go into public places or conduct business in person or whatever, right? There were all these restrictions put on the people who didn't get the jabby jab. Why? Because they weren't afraid, because they didn't have any fear. They weren't walking around with a mask on their face wearing their fear on their forehead, a 666 on their forehead. But they couldn't take any flights. It's just a precursor to what's coming, what's potentially coming, what else they could do. Jennifer Christie answered our question earlier about what else is on the forehead. She said the third eye. Benjamin Raphael says the crown chakra has 144,000 petals. Does it? It might. We'll have to double check that. But it wouldn't surprise us if it were. We thought it was just in the thousands. We never associated with 144,000. But you could be right, Benjamin. We're not challenging you. We're not disputing you. With our memory, you're probably right. Stuart Wilson says 144,000 can also be written as 144K, K being the 11th letter. So 144 can also be interpreted as 911 or K9. What I don't see clearly is why I saw this clearly some time ago. Well, there's two things that come to mind when you mention that. But there's three things now. The third one came to mind. One is 9/11. Okay, that was a date that was not chosen by accident. The two towers were brought to the ground, and one tower was erected in their place. Hopefully, we don't have to put too fine a point on it, but if someone is an upright 9 and they're standing between two towers, these are the pillars of Jachin and Boaz, and Yesod is their foundation. The ninth sphere. It's the cubic stone. It's the philosophical stone. Yes, it's the foundation of the third dimension, but it's also the foundation of the tree of life. That's 9/11. Because 11 are the pillars of the tree of life, Jachin and Boaz. So the 144,000 is that. Now, of course, what did they do? They brought down these towers. They brought down the pillars of Jachin and Boaz symbolically. And in their place, they erected one so-called Freedom Tower. Freedom to what? Freedom to be an I. Freedom to be a 6. The individual single tower of the ego. K9 is what we call a dog. Dog is God backwards. And if there is any doubt that the powers that be, the Black Lodge, is trying to turn the 144,000, the upright nines, who would be gods, right? Because that's what 9 does. You'll be damn straight that they're trying to make them into dogs, make them into animals. And if there's any doubt that the Black Lodge is trying to do that, then you just need to read our book on the Great Awakening of humanity and all the traps set for all those who would be awake, who would awaken, and all the different ways, all the different false awakenings that have been planted for this humanity, these traps for this humanity to fall into. Again, to fall into these souls, these beings, these monads that came here to be upright nines, but there's all these traps that turn them into sixes. These would-be gods who instead are turned into animals, or turned into dogs, they're turned into canines. Benjamin Ochoa says, I just remembered a question I wanted to ask you about mechanicity. And he continues, the question is, what's mechanical is trapped, then what part of us is free and has movement? So if what's mechanical is trapped, then what part of us is free and has movement? Our consciousness, our being, our innermost Atman. And he also asks, or an aspect of ourself for that matter. Well, the consciousness can travel. Your being can travel. You can travel in the astral plane. If you practice dream yoga, if you practice Jin state, you can extract your higher self from the prison of the mechanical self. And you can travel. We all travel when we sleep. We dream. We leave our bodies and when we dream. It's just a question of when we dream, we're in the lunar astral plane, we're in mechanical nature, we're in the astral plane that's ruled by our egos, by mechanical nature. But if we practice dream yoga and we meditate and we work very hard to become an upright nine and we conserve our sexual energy, then we can begin to lucid dream, right? We can project in the astral plane and we can go to the solar astral plane. We also have to we also transmute the sexual force. We have to practice sexual alchemy if we have that opportunity. And we have to eliminate our egos. And all of this process is about extracting ourselves from the prison of our mechanical nature. And we discussed in great detail last week what the nature of that prison is. It's a nature of our own creation. It's a nature of our own design. Because awakened beings, Buddhas, can leave their body at will. They're not trapped in their body. They choose to be here. They've taken on that body in the same way that you are not trapped in your clothes. At the end of the day, you can take off your clothing, right? You can take a shower and go to bed, and you're not trapped in the clothes that you're in. It's like that for an enlightened being, for an awakened Buddha. This physical body is just a suit, and we should be able to leave this body at will. And that's why practicing dream yoga and these practices have their advantages and have their benefits. We are only trapped here because we're identified, we're hypnotized, and we're mesmerized by this three-dimensional reality, and we're fascinated and hypnotized by our own mind, our rational mind, our emotions and our sensations. These three brains, they hypnotize us. They make us trapped in our mechanicity. We hope that answers your question. Benjamin asks, by preserving our sexual energy, we can elevate our consciousness and avoid indulging in sinful behavior. This aligns with a passage from Scripture which states, "Those who are born of God do not sin, for his seed remains in them. They cannot sin because they have been born of God." So this is probably uh, related. Well, it's not probably related. It is related. We just don't know if it's scripturally, textually in the same vicinity of those who, unless the man be born again of the waters and the Spirit. But that's the seed that is being discussed here. They have been born of God. To be born of God is to be born of the waters and the Spirit. Well, what is God inside of us? It's the creative energy. It's the creative force. It's the divine mother. But in order for the divine mother to give birth to us, to the innermost intimate Christ, in order for the seed to die and be reborn, a sapling, the feminine force must be risen to the crown chakra and must be fecundated by the Holy Spirit with immaculate conception. And this is that symbol of the angel Gabriel coming and announcing to Mary that she was made pregnant by the power of the Holy Spirit. Mary, the mother of Christ, is a symbol. She is the divine feminine. She's the nine. She's the Kundalini. And so it is through the power of the Holy Spirit that she is fecundated and gives birth to the Christ child with us, our innermost intimate Christ. That Christ is the divine androgen. The divine androgen can only be born of the union of divine masculine and divine feminine. That, in the Christian tradition, is Mary, the mother of God, and the Holy Spirit, her husband. They unite. The Holy Spirit is who impregnates Mary, the mother of God. That's how it is that she gives rise to Jesus. She gives birth to Jesus. And it's that seed within us is the essence, our innermost. So our innermost being can't be born of the waters and the Spirit unless we cooperate, unless we participate, unless we sacrifice that our sexual urges, our lust, and our desire for the sexual energy to flow down and out. We must sacrifice that. We must die as that lustful animal so that we can be reborn of the waters and the Spirit. Jennifer has shared a link here. Now, unfortunately, because of the way StreamYards works, there is no easy way for us to copy that or paste it in any way. So, if your intention, Jennifer, was for us to go visit that page, we're going to have to type that in manually. Open eyes one dot weeb. Oh, for Pete's sake. Okay, let's try this again. Open. No. Well, that keyboard decided to die on us. Let's try another keyboard. Oh, fun. Okay. No, that's not working either. So it's not the keyboard. It's must be the software. How wonderful. Okay, let's. Some bizarre reason, we can't type into our browser. I wonder if it's because we have the s- oh, it's some stupid. Bear with us while we suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. No, we can't. Sorry, you know what, Jennifer? We're not going to be able to visit that link. Some our the computer is just not behaving right now. We don't know what it is. We can't type. Uh, let's hopefully we can still do the mouse thing. Okay. Let's Stuart says in the UK there is a numbers game like like Lotto. It's called Bingo. Okay. When the callers pulls numbers 11, it's also announced as legs 11. So I saw the towers falling like a symbolic taking off the legs to generate mass fear. Fair enough. Fair enough. Um, Benjamin says, "Oh, okay, thanks. I forgot where that derived from. You're welcome." Jennifer says, "All the chakras equal 144,000." Okay. And she says, "All of the 7 chakras together, if added up, equals 144,000 petals." Okay. And Benjamin says that he stands corrected. Okay. That makes a little bit more sense because our understanding was that the crown chakra was 10,000 petals, but we might be wrong on that number, but that was our understanding, that was 10. And then the other chakras are their various different numbers. But if they add up to 144,000, that's another indication there that what we were describing earlier about the uh, the kundalini rising up the spinal column, awakening all the chakras. And 144,000 adds up to 9. So the upright 9 in 3 brains, but the rising kundalini awakens all of the chakras. And if you add up all the petals, it's 144,000. The symbols are related. All right. At the moment, uh, unless there's some other questions or comments, or somebody wants to come on and make any additions or share something, we don't have much more to add at this moment to the conversation. Uh, we're sorry about the malfunction with the computer. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why it's not behaving. I wonder if some bizarre. Anyway, we're not going to obsess over it. We'll worry about it once the live stream is done. If anyone has any other comments or questions, feel free to ask them or bring them up. Or if anybody has any other significance of the 3 and the 6 and the 9 that you'd like to share, we by all means, we don't want to discourage anyone from going and reading uh, about Tesla or Walter Russell or any of the other numerology related to 369. It's all fascinating stuff, and you never know what, if you're a numbers oriented individual, you never know what exposure to those numerical relationships, what they might kindle in you, what they might spark in you from within, like they clearly sparked in Nikola Tesla. And they clearly speak to many people on many levels. What we wanted to do was to share from our point of view, from our perspective, what is the most important aspects of the 3 and the 6 and the 9, when it comes to this time in human history, when it comes to, as you know, you guys were pointing out with 144,000, and how to be among the 144,000. And that's, as Benjamin was quoting there from the Bible, to preserve the seed, to preserve the seed, and to work with the with tantra in the upright way, as an upright 9, not as an inverted 6, because there's many schools of tantra that teach you to practice tantra to waste the sexual force, to utilize it, to use it, but for nefarious ends. For it ultimately flows down and out, and that just creates a 666. It just creates an awakened demon, because the creative energy must create something. If it doesn't create an upright 9, if it doesn't create a living God, it's going to create a living demon, because the creative force can only create. Well, it can also destroy. In order to create, something must be destroyed. So to create a living God, you sacrifice the animal self. But to create a demon, you sacrifice your inner God, your innermost seed. You spill it, you sacrifice it. That's what gets sacrificed on the altar of pleasure, of sensation, of desire. Stuart Wilson says, time to go watch Glory End. Thanks, everybody here. You know what? We encourage you to do so, because what we discussed today will directly be reflected and have direct significance to the series that Glorian is doing on sacred sexuality. Obviously it will. But the comprehension of what happened to humanity in the Lemurian epoch becomes that much richer when you can comprehend them in the context of our spaghetti scribblings. It will become clear why that is when you watch that show. Again, the link is up in the chat, but we can put it on the screen again here. So there's the link to the Glorian's YouTube video that, again, just released today at noon. We've already watched it, so we do recommend you watch it. Benjamin says, awesome lecture as always. I'll be going back and watching this lecture again. So much to learn. You're welcome, Benjamin. It's our pleasure. It's our honor. It's our privilege. Where did the Glorian link go? It went away. There it is. Put it back. We apologize again, Jennifer, that we couldn't follow up on that link. I don't know what's going on with our keyboards. We'll figure it out for next week for sure. But again, this is, you know what? This is the kind of stuff that happens in Mercury retrograde with us all the time. We have really strange, peculiar anomalies happening on computers, and usually with input devices. Again, because Mercury affects communication. So there you have it. Jennifer says, thanks, everyone. Great lecture this week. Much appreciated. You're very welcome, Jennifer. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for sharing and interacting. It's always a pleasure to have people participating in the chat. We had Stuart on here for a few moments, but now I think he's gone to go view the Glorian video, which we encourage all of you to do, again, truly. Benjamin says, thank you for sharing the fascinating symbolism of 369. According to ancient sculptures, in order to become a god or saint, one must conquer their animal instincts or the dragon within. Learned a great deal today. Thank you, sir. You're very welcome, Benjamin. And on that note of the 369, we found so many great visuals that we had wanted to share, in one capacity or another. And one of them was the Fibonacci sequence, and that also represents a 3 and 6 and a 9, the golden ratio. Um, no, there's a great many, much to learn, much to explore and discover. And it really is, as Nikolai Tesla said, that if you really are into metaphysical science and numerology, and you really want to unlock the so-called secrets of the universe, you can keep digging into 3 and 6 and 9 and see where it takes you. Just remember, or shall we say, never forget what these numbers really mean and their significance. So always remember not to fill our heads with a bunch of intellectualism about these topics, but really live it. But really live it in our three brains, in our hearts, in our minds, and in our bodies, in remembrance of our true selves, because that's ultimately where we want to be, right? We want to be an upright 9 standing before those two towers, the 11, and then we want to walk through. Because if those two towers are 2, 9 plus 2 is 11. We become the tree of life. And Lord knows we're all about we're all about the two towers, the two pillars of the tree of life. Anything else? Any other comments or questions? If not, we want to thank you all again for joining us. We hope that you found today valuable and informative. Go and watch the Glorian video if you have time. If not today, then tomorrow. And we look forward to seeing you all again next week. And we hope that we can get over our hang-ups and hold-ups with regards to Mercury in retrograde, and we pray that we can make the progress that we were hoping to make this week on the book, and that we'll have good news on that front for you next week. Well, no promises. We'll see. We'll do our best. So, from the bottom of our heart to all of you, have a wonderful week, and as always, inferential peace. Take care, everyone.